Greetings and salutations, YouTubers. This is ZillaFan85. I'm back today with a video that I really was excited about. This is going to be my personal discussion of one of my favorite video games of all time. None other than, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Which again, like I said, it's one of my favorites. If you've actually had watched previously my ranking of my personal top 10 favorite video games, this was actually my second favorite game ever. And two, it's a very close toss-up between this game and my number one favorite. So it's really high up there. It's a game that I play a ton of, and have throughout all the years since I've had it, and obviously still to this day play it quite often. Probably one of the games that I play the most of, and that will always be the case. Like the kid from the Sandlot said, forever. So, but nonetheless, though, yes, like I said, I really love this game. I'm a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. Sonic is my favorite game character ever. And mainly so, with the classic Sonic games, because again, I'm an old school gamer, as you would call it, definitely, a nostalgic retro gamer, and and so of course the Genesis era Sonic games are the ones that I'm, obviously that I really enjoy the most, of course, by far. With this one, this is obviously the cream of the crop for Sonic games for me. I haven't had the chance, obviously I don't have any of the newer consoles, so I haven't had the chance to play Sonic Mania. I heard nothing but really awesome things about it, and I hope eventually I'll get to play Sonic Mania because it sounds fantastic and a really nice callback to the fans of the classic era Sonic. Which obviously, again, is what I'm into. But nonetheless, though, still for this game, like I said, still one of my favorite games ever. And, like I said, I'll play it. I'll play it forever and ever. And it's a really exciting game. And, there's a lot to do within it. That's kind of why I wanted to make a separate video just on this, just to kind of discuss it. Not so much going to be a review as more of just a discussion, just kind of talking about it, talking about the different things that you can do within the game itself, etc. And like I said, there's a lot to talk about, so let me, try to, see if I can hit all the points that I wanted to make with discussing this. One of the first things to note is the fact that this game, which was released, of course, in 1994 by Sega, obviously for the Sega Genesis system, and I believe the Master System as well, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, though, originally this version of the game, as it's called Sonic 3 and Knuckles, it's also called the Sonic 3 Complete version. And the reason being is because the game, when it was released, they ended up, due to time constraints, they ended up having to release it in two different parts because Sega was pushing for a release date. So earlier in the year, they had to get something out, so they released what became known as Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which is essentially, the first half of the game, if you will. And then later in the year is when they released Sonic and Knuckles, which again, obviously, is the second half of the game. But originally, the two different entities that they became was originally intended to just be one game. But like I said, due to Sega having time constraints that they wanted to push for a release date, that's why they had to release the Sonic 3 portion of the game, when that was completed, and then had to release that second half of the game, Sonic and Knuckles, later on in the year. But what they did do was create a way to play the complete version of the game, which I'm going to get into here in just a bit. But just wanted to kind of give a little bit of backstory on it, and of course a little bit of backstory on the game itself. Essentially, with Sonic 3, at least anyways, it does pick up, just after Sonic the Hedgehog 2 ends, where Sonic has defeated Dr. Robotnik, and yes, I do refer to him as Dr. Robotnik. Like I said, I'm not, like I had said in my previous video, I'm not really into calling him Dr. Eggman. I grew up with calling him Robotnik. Anyway, though, so he defeated Dr. Robotnik with the mega, with his mecha Egg Robo, I think it was called. Anyway, on the when he fought him on the Death Egg ship, which was, of course, in the within their planet's orbit. But he defeated him, and for all intents and purposes, essentially caused a malfunction on the Death Egg ship, which basically, at least not fully destroyed it, but basically put it out of commission. And Sonic, of course, escaped with the help of Tails at the end of the game. They assumed Dr. Robotnik was defeated for good, but what ended up happening was Dr. Robotnik managed to crash land his Death Egg ship on a special place on the planet known as the Floating Island. It's an island which harnesses a lot of magic powers and abilities, but not a lot know as to why, or even really know of the existence of it, other than maybe through legends. But Robotnik managed to crash land there, and using whatever equipment he had left, because he still had world domination in his sights, he actually detected the presence of a very powerful emerald on the planet itself, and obviously wanted to go ahead and try to employ its power, along with the power of the Chaos Emeralds, if he could, which would go ahead and obviously fully be able to repair his Death Egg ship and continue his plans for planetary domination. Meanwhile, Sonic and Tails had returned to their own home abode, thinking that Robotnik was gone for good. But I guess Tails had worked on a new invention, and this is, of course, the storyline which I've kind of followed along from online. Actually, the Sonic Wikia kind of explains it a little bit better, because the game itself never really explains, some of the basic gist, but they never really get into a lot of the nitty gritty. But basically, though, Sonic and Tails had returned to their homes, and Tails had used a new invention that he came up with called the Jewel Finder, which also ended up detecting the presence of this massively powerful emerald. And obviously he was able to go ahead and convince Sonic to join him on a mission to try and see if they can find this emerald and see what could be what can be done with it. I guess, because Tails had learned that Robotnik was going after the emerald, so obviously he was able to convince Sonic to join him into trying to stop him. So they used Tails' plane, the Tornado, to go ahead and locate the floating island where it was, which actually, due to Robotnik's Death Egg ship, was kind of brought down to the surface. So it was actually more like a regular island at this point in the water. But basically what happened was that Sonic, who still had possession of the 7 Chaos Emeralds from his previous adventure, upon approaching the island, decided to use their power, and of course he liked to show off a bit, so he transformed into Super Sonic with the power of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and kind of ventured off a little bit ahead of Tails, who was still flying the plane looking for a spot to land. So he arrived onto the island first and was immediately met by a new character named Knuckles, who was, of course, the echidna. And he used his sort of brass knuckle fists, not really brass knuckles, but his spiked knuckle fists, to knock Sonic, or Super Sonic at this point, off balance, and knocked all 7 Chaos Emeralds out of his possession, which obviously turned Super Sonic back to normal, just Sonic now. And Knuckles, who was already met with Dr. Robotnik, Robotnik knew that Sonic and Tails were coming to try and stop him. Robotnik, I should say, convinced Knuckles that he was good and that Sonic and Tails were evil, basically, and that they were trying to steal this special emerald that existed on the island, as well as taking possession of the other emeralds as well. So so since Knuckles was tricked like this, that's why he ended up becoming a sort of menace to Sonic and Tails in their adventure here. So he grabbed the 7 Chaos Emeralds when he knocked Sonic off balance, and then kind of hid them away on the island. And obviously, it was going to be up to Sonic and Tails to try and retrieve them again. He disappeared after that, and then of course that's when Sonic and Tails start their adventure, and of course they have to venture through the island, trying to make their way through all the zones, and then from there, as well, trying to recover the 7 Chaos Emeralds and use them to try and stop Dr. Robotnik once again, who was obviously in the process of trying to rebuild his Death Egg ship. So that's basically the crust of the game, the crux of the game, I should say. Sorry, and it's a really, really awesome concept. I like how it picks up right after Sonic 2, and continues on the adventure and to a more grander scale, and obviously with the powers from this floating island sort of add this new sort of magic element to it, which I think is really, really cool. And then of course the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game takes place just after the Sonic 3 portion ends, picking up with the adventure continuing on the island, and them continuing to still try and thwart Robotnik. And of course, with playing as Sonic and Tails, along the way, you still do have Knuckles just trying to be devious and do things to try to slow down their progress along the way. So you're kind of dealing with that, along with trying to fight Robotnik and his Badnik army, as they're called. So his minions. So. But like I said, that's basically the crux of it. It's really, really awesome, and it's just like I said, it's a game that I really, really love. So some people, obviously, for all of you who are familiar with the game, obviously you'll know how it works and how to actually play this complete version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. But others who are new to the game or just really aren't aware, you might be kind of curious about it. So that's what brings me to this point. So how does one play the complete version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles? Like I said, anyone who's new to the game or just not familiar with it may not know how this actually works, but it's actually a really cool concept, and it is obviously possible to play the full version of the game. The key is, of course, you got to have both games in your arsenal, and basically kind of go from there. So I will go ahead and illustrate that point. And there you've got it, folks. So basically, when you've got Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and you've got Sonic and Knuckles, basically Sonic and Knuckles, as it states here, has a unique ability called the lock-on technology that the game cartridge was actually made with. So when they developed the game, they decided. That this would be the ultimate way to play the full version of Sonic 3, as it were. In order to become obviously Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So Sonic and Knuckles, like I said, has that lock-on technology. So the top portion of the cartridge is meant that you can actually stack another cartridge onto it and lock it into place simply by pressing it in. So as you can see here, that's how it does complete itself. And once you've got that complete cartridge stack made like that with Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic 3 inserted into it, that's when you can go ahead and place it into the Genesis and play the game from there. It can be a little bit tricky, I do have to admit, because with playing the cartridge version, a lot of times you have to kind of put it in just right in order for it to recognize and work. It does take a few tries a lot of times, so I will have to admit that. But once you can get it to work properly, you can play the full version of the game of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And the cool thing is with the lock-on technology of Sonic and Knuckles, they actually also incorporated a method where you can lock on Sonic the Hedgehog 2 with Sonic and Knuckles, and you can actually play as Knuckles in Sonic 2, and it's actually called Knuckles in Sonic 2. So you'll play through Sonic 2, but with Knuckles throughout the entire game. So that's a cool little addition. So in a way, them separating the game like this does make for some pretty neat stuff that you can do. And any other cartridge that you insert into Sonic and Knuckles is not, any other Genesis cartridge is not meant for the game. But what you can do is you can do you can play what they call the Blue Sphere game, which is any other cartridge other than Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 that's inserted into Sonic and Knuckles. You'll see this screen where you'll see, I believe it's Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik all on the screen with this text flashing across it saying "No way, no way." But if you simultaneously hit A, B, and C, your A, B, and C buttons on your Genesis controller, it'll then bring you to a screen where you can go ahead and play through the Blue Sphere stages. I'll get to those Blue Sphere there because they're the special stages. I'll get to those a little bit more. I'll get to those more in just a little bit here, I should say, because there's definitely a lot to talk about with the special stages. But that's just kind of a cool little thing. So if you got another cartridge that you want to do, at least you can do something kind of neat like that, and it's just kind of a cool little bonus game, if you will. And again, obviously you can play the game separately. You can play Sonic 3 on its own, or you can play Sonic and Knuckles on its own. But if you want that complete experience, you do have to play them together. And there have been re-releases of the game on other systems. I know the GameCube released the Sonic Mega Collection, and then one that I've personally got is the Sonic Mega Collection Plus, which is for the PS2, which I actually really like playing that a lot, probably just as much as I do on the actual Genesis itself, because it's exactly the same. You're just playing it on the PS2, obviously, and you've got the PS2 controller. They also have the save states that you can take advantage of this time around, should you need to do so. Generally, if I'm going to play the game, I just want to play it straight through, but at least it's a nice little addition that you can do. I believe like the Xbox Live and whatnot have also re-released the game, and I know it was supposed to receive a mobile release, but I guess due to issues that were coming up at the time, they never were able to finish that release. So you did get ones like, you got the original Sonic the Hedgehog, you got Sonic 2, and you also got Sonic CD. which all did receive mobile releases, but it's a real shame that Sonic 3 didn't get that mobile release, because I would absolutely love to have that. Obviously, again, one of my favorite games of all time. So that's it's really, really, just cool what you can do with the game here. So, and like I said, whether you play it on the Genesis itself or you play one of the later releases, it's just a lot of fun to play. Any way you slice it, basically. So, and like I said, obviously I do have my completed games on both. Because I have it obviously with the Genesis, and I've also got it on the Mega Collection Plus on my PS2. So like I said, though, anyway, each way that you want to play it, though, it's you're still getting the same experience. So, like I said, I always just highly, highly recommend it. So when you play through the game, though, there are different facets that you can use to play it through, which I'm going to get into now. So without further ado. So, when you reach the main title screen after you've loaded the game, when you've put the cartridges together or played it on one of the other versions, as I had mentioned, you can play you can play the traditional one-player game, or there's actually a two-player versus mode, which they have a few zones available that you can play through, and it's more or less just a racing mode against a second player, obviously trying to reach the end first. So similar to the two-player versus mode in Sonic 2. Honestly, I don't really like it quite as much as the two-player versus mode in Sonic 2, but it is kind of fun nonetheless. But most of the time when I'm going to play this, I'm just going to play the standard one-player game, which is obviously the other option. And then you've got the options screen as well that you can use to select different things. But once you want to play the traditional version of the game with the one-player game, of course, you've actually got 4 different modes that you can play the game with. And by that I mean you can play the game as Sonic and Tails, or you can play it as Sonic alone, or you can play it as Tails alone, or you can also play it as Knuckles. So he has become the new playable character, basically, in this game. So, and of course, with if you play Sonic and Knuckles on its own, you can play as either Sonic or you can play as Knuckles. And if you just play Sonic 3 on its own, you can play as Sonic and Tails, Sonic alone, or Tails alone. So you've got all those different versions that you can play, but obviously we're sticking to the complete version, for Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So it's got those 4 different modes to play, and each one... Now, Sonic and Tails and Sonic alone are essentially the same game. It's just whether or not you want Tails as a counterpart, who just kind of, tags along with you on the way, but you're really still playing it as Sonic, so you're experiencing the game through him. And of course, he's got access to all the zones in the game. There's a total, when you play the complete version, there's a total of 14 zones, and he's got access to all 14 of them. So, when you play as Tails, he's actually got access to 13. He doesn't have access to the final zone. And Knuckles actually has access to 12 zones. So the last 2 zones he does not have access to. The other thing to note is when playing through these different modes, whether you're with Sonic or you're with Tails or Knuckles, you also have some different areas that they access as well. With Sonic and with Tails, they're mostly the same places that you get to, but there are a few unique differences that if you go through it as Tails, you'll see that Sonic doesn't seem to really access, and plus because Tails has the ability to fly, you can reach certain areas that Sonic can't. And then alternatively, when you play the game as Knuckles, he's got certain areas, these sort of, I don't know if you would call them hidden areas, but they're areas that are kind of blocked off, and neither Sonic or Tails can break through. They're like these special walls, as I call them, and only Knuckles can break through them and reach these certain areas. And in fact, some of these areas that only Knuckles can reach, you kind of have to go through in order to progress the game with him. So he's got that ability. He's got some pretty cool abilities as well. And some of their abilities, obviously Sonic, he's got the traditional spin jump. He's got the super spin attack. He's got the spin dash attack, and of course, with his, can run, in his traditional sense. And then, of course, you've also got the new edition of the what they call the Insta Shield, which I also refer to personally as the slash attack, because when you do when you jump to do the spin jump, you can then double jump by tapping the jump button again, and he'll basically do a 360 slash, which can magnify the range of the spin attack, of that jumping spin, with hitting enemies, and also for that moment that he does that slash, will protect him from enemy attack. So that's kind of a cool thing with it. I do use the slash. Sometimes, it depends though if how often you prefer to use it. I'll use it from time to time, but it's kind of a cool little addition, which I did like that they brought on. And the other thing with using the double jump is, and this is only the case for Sonic, when you access the shields that are in the game, there's 3 different shields this time around. There's that clear bubble shield, which keeps you safe underwater, that you don't lose air, and that's for underwater stages, that's a really, really helpful shield to have on. And it's the only shield that you can wear underwater, because the other 2 disperse as soon as they hit the water. But the other 2 shields that you've also got the flame shield, which protects you from fire attacks or fire-based attacks. And then, of course, you've got the 3rd shield in the game, which is the electric shield, which obviously can protect you from electric-based attacks. And it also, since it has a magnetic force to the shield, rings that are in the area are attracted to the shield, so they'll actually be magnetically pulled into you, and you can. You can collect rings a little bit easier with that shield. It's at first it used to be my second favorite shield, but nowadays, especially with that ability for collecting rings, which I try to collect as many as I can when I play through the game, it's become not only the most useful shield, but definitely by far my favorite shield in the game. As it's become nowadays, anyway. And the other note to it is these shields, and like I said, with Sonic only, with wearing the shields, you can also do the special attacks that the shields offer. With the bubble shield, you can do this sort of bounce attack. And they're all accessed by double jumping, by the way. So you sort of do this sort of ball bounce attack, like a beach ball, basically, where you'll bounce downward towards the ground, and it can be useful at times, especially if you need a quick means to sort of attack down like that or bounce, and you can continuously bounce as many times as you want by continuously tapping the jump button for that. For the other 2 shields, though, you can only do the attack, just the one time with the double jump, so then you'd have to jump and double jump again to perform the attacks there. With the flame shield, you've got that flame dash, which I kind of liken to the with Dragon Ball Z to the Kaioken attack. I know it's not really the same, but it just kind of just because of the the aura presence of it and stuff. It just kind of reminds me of it, but it's a cool. It'll allow you to dash forward, and if you're on an open plane, then you can run at a higher speed when when you hit the ground and you're still moving forward. So it's got some nice little nice little addition, nice little bonus, perks to it, I should say. And the electric shield, again, being very useful here, the double jump for it does just that. It actually magnifies your jumping height so that you can jump. I believe it's either a time and a half as high or twice as high. Not 100% sure, but it's pretty close to twice as high as your normal jump, which if you need to reach a higher place, that's obviously extraordinarily useful. So again, kind of showcasing the usefulness of this shield, and obviously why it is my favorite. So and then of course with the shields, with either, if you're wearing them with either Tails or Knuckles, you can't do the special attacks / abilities that they perform. You can't perform those attacks, I should say, but the protection that they offer otherwise is still the same. And of course, with the electric shield, still attracts the rings with the magnetic force. So so those are some cool things to note here. And like I said, so you've got, depending on which character you play through as, there's different facets of the game. And when you play through the entire version of the game, it's essentially the same anyway as playing either Sonic 3 alone or Sonic and Knuckles alone. It's essentially the same, but there are some special things basically that are unlocked when you play through the complete version of the game, and special events that you really, especially if you want to try to fully complete the game, that you can't miss, vis-a-vis playing the complete version of the game. And then basically the 14 zones, as they are composed of, you've got the Angel Island zone, you've got the Hydro City zone, the Marble Garden zone, the Carnival Night zone, the Ice Cap zone, the Launch Base zone, and those 6 zones are all from the Sonic 3 portion. And then you enter, after you complete Launch Base zone, then you go right into the Sonic and Knuckles portion. So the 7th zone then becomes the Mushroom Hill zone. Then you've got the Flying Battery zone, then the Sandopolis zone, then Lava Reef zone, then Hidden Palace zone, then Sky Sanctuary zone, and then the Death Egg zone, and finally the Doomsday zone. And obviously Doomsday zone, like I said, the 14th zone, that's the one that only Sonic can access. And then the Death Egg zone, either Sonic or Tails can access that one, but obviously for Tails, his game stops there at the end of that zone. And for Knuckles, Sky Sanctuary zone is his final zone in the game, so the Death Egg zone and Doomsday zone are not accessible for him. And then obviously, like I said too, some of the just different areas that they reach, and also some different battles that Sonic and Tails face that Knuckles doesn't face, or faces his own that they don't face. So it kind of evens out when you look at it from that point. So that kind of is a run through of some of that, which is really cool, all the different stuff that you can do with it. So that's kind of some stuff that I definitely like to talk about. And now on to one of the major points, and especially with trying to fully complete the game, this is one of the big things that you want to handle here. Excuse me. So this is obviously the big key for your trying to fully complete the game. You want to attain, in this game, there's actually, when you play this complete version, there's actually now becomes 2 sets of emeralds. You've got the 7 traditional Chaos Emeralds, but then you've also got now the 7 Super Emeralds, which are uniquely introduced in this game. And even also unique to this game as well, there's now a Master Emerald. And that is the Master Emerald is the one that Dr. Robotnik and Tails that they were detecting before on the that was hidden somewhere on the island, and that's really what Robotnik is after, and what Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are trying to fight to protect. So basically, the Sonic, well, if you don't collect them all in the Sonic 3 portion, then you'll kind of need to try and finish collecting them in the Sonic and Knuckles portion. I'm referring to the Chaos Emeralds, the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Those are only accessible, their special stages in the Sonic 3 portion, and if you don't get them all, then when you reach the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game, you will need to try and finish collecting them before you can be able to finish collecting the Super Emeralds at that point in time. So basically, to try and find the Chaos Emeralds, you have to reach the special stages, and to find those special stages, you have hidden areas that are in the game, so you kind of have to know where to go for them. But when you find them, you'll see these what are known as the giant rings, and obviously they look like a ring, but they're of course much larger. And when you touch one of these giant rings, you'll be brought to the special stage. And the special stage is this sort of checkerboard patterned spherical planet, and what it is the object of it is that you need to collect all the blue spheres within this special stage that you're brought to, and when you collect them all at the end, then you'll receive the emerald, and whichever emerald you're going for, obviously you can kind of see the different colors on here, for the emeralds, and the Super Emeralds have the same colors as well. They're just larger. Basically, the Super Emeralds are larger versions of the Chaos Emeralds, and obviously more powerful. And then, of course, the Master Emerald, which you can also see here on the right, that's the largest of all the emeralds. And obviously the most powerful. Obviously, it is the driving force behind all the emeralds. So, but you need the power of the emeralds, all 14 emeralds, Chaos Emeralds and Super Emeralds together, to unlock the power of the Master Emerald. But basically, when you go through these special stages, like I said, the main goal is to collect the blue spheres. But there's other points to it as well that you can try to collect, which you don't. It's not really necessary for the 100% completion. The 100% completion is collecting all emeralds. But as sort of a side mission or even goal, if you will, in these special stages, you can also try to find all the rings that become available in the stage, and try to attain what they call perfects. And to find all the rings, the main thing some of them are kind of in these almost like hidden spots within these spherical special stages that you go through, so you kind of have to know where to look for them. But then otherwise you can otherwise to attain the rings, I should say. I'm trying to explain this as best as I can. Spheres that you see that are within like these large groups, generally they're generally talking ones that are in like these large squares or rectangular patterns, but they're not always in that sort of pattern. But they basically these larger groups of them, and you've got basically blue spheres trapped within other blue spheres, because when you collect a blue sphere, it turns into a red sphere. And a sort of quick run through on that: the red sphere is like a goal point. So if you hit that, you're gonna unfortunately be taken out of the special stage and obviously lose out on your chance at least at that point in time, to collect the Chaos Emeralds. So hitting the red sphere is what you want to avoid at all costs, basically. Then you've got these sort of grayish, silverish spheres with these red stars on them. Those are bumpers, which will knock you backwards. Sometimes you need to use them to your advantage, but a lot of the other times you really want to try to avoid them. And then you've got the yellow spheres, which are really only available in the Super Emerald stages, which actually bounce you forward, send you into the air, and bounce you forward. I believe it's five square patterns forward, if I'm not mistaken, but I believe that is the case. But as far as these large groups of blue spheres go, when you touch the outer edges of them, you go around the outer edges of the blue spheres. So like when you go, if it's like a large square with blue spheres, and there's blue spheres trapped inside of the other blue spheres, then when you touch all the outer edges and you make all the entire outer edge, go through it and make it all red spheres, then once you reach the end, all the spheres in that large group will turn into rings. And I know it's kind of a bit tricky for me to explain. I'm doing the best I can, and I even tried to look up on that, Wikia, just to try and help with the explanation of it, because it's like I know what to do, but trying to explain it is a little, can be a little complicated, if you will. But basically that's what you do, and you turn those groups into, if done correctly, you'll turn the entire group. That was once the blue spheres, the entire group will be turned into rings, and that includes the ones on the edges that you collected and turned into the red spheres. And what you want to do is obviously you want to try to get all the rings. And once when you collect 50 rings within a special stage, you do get a continue, which is characteristic of the previous Sonic installments. But furthermore, this time around, when you collect all rings within a special stage, that's when you achieve the perfect. And the perfect adds 50,000 points to your overall score. And you also, because every time you reach 50,000 points to your, every time you add 50,000 points to your score, you also get an extra life. So it's got some nice bonuses for it. And if you're, really want to build up your score and whatnot, it's just a nice sort of, almost like a side mission to try to accomplish. And obviously you need to do that while you're in the special stage. And the other thing is, you have to get all the rings before you clear that final blue sphere. So don't clear a large group of blue spheres to turn into a ring if it's right at the end where you're going to collect that last one, because as soon as you collect the last blue sphere, all spheres basically vanish, and you're slowed down and reach the emerald and the end of the special stage at that point. So that's one thing to note. And with that too, and I should have mentioned this earlier, the more time you spend in the special stage, the faster you get. So when you're running around, and you're either as, in any of the 4 game modes, obviously, whichever you're playing as, that's just how it goes. So like I said, you got to be mindful of that, because the faster you go, the trickier it gets with trying to maneuver around, and and the higher, just as a sort of offshoot of it, the higher the risk is of hitting one of the red spheres and being taken out of the special stage. So you just got to kind of be mindful of it. And I've gotten into sticky situations many times. Even though I guess you could say, for all intents and purposes, have mastered going through the special stages, and even now getting the perfects in all the special stages. excuse me, which is something that I really, really sought after to do. But you do have to. It still does get very tricky and can be very, very difficult at times. So, but it's certainly the ultimate goal because, like I said, and mainly so, collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds and all 7 Super Emeralds. Which will in turn unlock the power of the Master Emerald. This is the main key to achieving the 100% completion of the game, and of course, getting the true ending, if you will. So I know I spent quite a bit of time on that, but I did kind of want to elaborate on this. I knew already this was not going to be a short video because, there's a lot that I wanted to kind of discuss here and talk about. So carrying on, though. Now on to the other point of collecting the 7 Chaos Emeralds and 7 Super Emeralds that are within the game. This also unlocks your transformations depending on the emeralds collected. So once you do collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds before you get to the point of collecting any Super Emeralds, I should say too, this allows, of course, Sonic, who previously was seen in Sonic 2, able to transform into Super Sonic. And if you're playing the game as Knuckles, you can also transform into Super Knuckles upon collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds. And the same does hold true, I should also mention, if you're playing Knuckles in Sonic 2. When you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds with him, you do get to transform into Super Knuckles at that point as well. And for any of the transformations, you need at least a minimum of 50 rings to be able to transform. And in this game, the double jump engages the transformation, I should say, and obviously very homage-ish to Dragon Ball Z, if you will, with the sort of Super Saiyan transformation. So again, like I said in my previous video, another thing I really love with Sonic is, again, a huge DBZ fan, easily my favorite anime and one of my favorite fandoms overall. So it's something that I really, really love then with these Sonic games. Now, Tails, on the other hand, collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, for whatever reason with the design, I'm not 100% sure on the backstory of this, but the 7 Chaos Emeralds do not allow Tails to transform at all, so only Sonic and Knuckles can transform with the 7 Chaos Emeralds. But he's not going to be completely left out of the fold, because then once you get all 7 Chaos Emeralds, with those collecting those or getting to those giant rings, you'll notice in the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game that the giant rings, once you've got all the Chaos Emeralds, you'll then see the super rings, as they're called. They're like otherwise known as glowing giant rings. When you enter those, you'll be automatically transported to the hidden palace zone, and this is where you can make your attempts to collect the super emeralds. The standard Chaos Emeralds that you have collected, if for instance you've got all 7, you'll see them placed on these platforms, if you will, and you'll also see at the top the Master Emerald, which is almost in like the background, but you'll see it there. And you'll see the placement of the Super Emeralds, which again, like I said, are much larger than the standard Chaos Emeralds. And with this, too, you can select and choose which Super Emerald special stage you want to enter to try to obviously attain that, said Super Emerald. And once you get all 7 Super Emeralds, you've got all the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and then you get all the 7 Super Emeralds. Not only have you unlocked the power of the Master Emerald, but now you've unlocked your new transformations. And those are the hyper forms for Sonic and Knuckles, where you've got Hyper Sonic now and Hyper Knuckles, and you can see both in the in the pictures here. And then you've also got now Tails finally being able to transform into none other than Super Tails. And his super transformation, though, it is really cool. He's got the not only does he kind of glow what Super Knuckles does, but now you can see though as well. He's got his companions there, the Super Flickies as they are called, and a lot of people kind of call them the Super Flicky Army of Doom. They're really really a nice addition because they do help Tails along the way. You can't collect rings with them, however, you can essentially. They will, because you don't really control them. They just sort of accompany you, but they will surround you, and they'll help you attack enemies, and they'll attack both standard enemies as well as boss enemies. And that's the other thing too with this game, which I forgot to mention, is most of these zones do have a mid zone boss. Before you'll end up facing essentially Robotnik at the end of the zone. At least in most cases, you'll face him anyway. But you'll see though those mid zone bosses, which is a nice little addition. Adds another challenge to the game. But like I said, reverting back though with Super Tails, so the Super Flickies will, like I said, on their own attack standard enemies and bosses as well. So it is kind of a nice addition to have, because it does help. So but anyway though, so as far as Hyper and Super, or Hyper Sonic and Hyper Knuckles go, though, their powers are elevated beyond their super forms. They create these after images of themselves as they move along, which kind of illustrates that they are moving even faster than their super forms. You've also got some new unique abilities and attacks. Hyper Knuckles has that hyper jump that he can do, which can reach much higher than, it's a double jump that you'll have to perform, but you can reach much higher areas, or if you want to go any of the other directions, because you can go either up, when you jump, you can use the directional pad to kind of aim where you want that hyper jump to go, whether you want to go upward and you go to a much higher stage, I think like 3 or 4 times as high as Sonic can jump traditionally, but then you can also dash either left or right, or you can dash downward, of course. So that's really cool. And also when you perform that hyper jump, you'll see sort of like a sort of pulsating burst of energy caused, and any normal enemies that are on screen will be automatically defeated by that. So that's another cool little addition with that. With Hyper Knuckles, he can basically he's got some unique abilities of his own. He's got his when you glide from a far distance and you reach a side wall because obviously he can climb up and down the side walls, but when you glide from a far enough distance away and grab onto a side wall, it will cause an earthquake on the screen, which again will defeat any standard enemies that are on screen. So that's a cool addition as well. So again, so they've got some really unique abilities. And the other thing with Hyper Sonic and Hyper Knuckles is they can also breathe underwater, so that's a really nice little bonus there too. So some really cool things to note here with that. So that's kind of the other thing I wanted to talk about. So, and obviously once you do achieve these 3 forms that I've shown here and finish the game, that's obviously too when you'll get that true ending of the game. So, but anyways, so carrying on, because there are some, other than the main game itself, the other thing I kind of wanted to address is that there are some sort of not necessarily side missions, but side goals that you can essentially aim for. If if you want to, you don't have to, but I like to try to aim for these side goals to achieve, just to try to better myself as I play the game, time and time again. When I play it all the way through from beginning to end, going from scratch. Which, like I said, most of the time when I play it, I like to do that. So I've got my saved games, but I still kind of prefer to start from scratch and collect everything and see how well I can do. So without further ado, here's a few side goals that you may want to aim for when you play through the game. So see what you can try to achieve here. The three main side goals that I at least look for are to try to achieve as high of a score as possible. I know or at least I severely doubt I'll ever beat the world record, which I kind of I watched through the video. The guy that did it uploaded it onto YouTube, and I think he streamed it. Well, I believe he streamed it as well. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to stream, so my stuff that I got, though, I did take pictures of, which I am gonna run through here. But the high score that you can achieve, like I said, that world record, at least from what I saw anyways, the guy that posted it had it at 5,883,000 and change, which is an unbelievable score. To me, though, he kind of inflated it a little bit just by trying to get as many perfects as he can in the special stages without, without collecting, like at least getting all seven, where he'll just try to get the perfect and then intentionally lose, which I technically you can do, but to me, at least, I kind of feel like that's inflating the score a bit, but whatever, it is what it is, though. And my high score I was still very, very proud of, which I recently got a new high score. All of these that I have on here, I recently attained new records for myself with them. So other than the high score, the other thing is the ring count, which is in a given act, because every time you start a new act / new zone, your ring count is zeroed out and you got to start over again. And then the other goal you can strive for, or at least that I have anyways, is the lives count, and that of course is by the end of the game. Now, thing to note with the lives count, though, is if you play, because you do have that save feature, which Sonic 3 incorporates, and when you play the complete version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, obviously you've got that ability for that save feature as well. So, and obviously I do have all four modes of the game saved, all four cleared off, but a lot of times, and especially as of late with trying to achieve these goals, I'll just play a no save game and just play it, like I said, from scratch, from beginning to end. And the thing with the lives count is with the save games, when you play them, if you reach 99 lives and then you go over that in a zone, then when you reach a new zone, it'll automatically go back down to 99. However, when you play the no save game and you play it all the way through, it'll just keep the tally of lives going through all the way to the end. So that's kind of the one thing to note with that. And obviously I wanted to see how many lives I could attain, which again, I did set a new record for myself. All these that I got new records, but they're all for myself, so they're really my own goals. I doubt that I'd ever get world records or anything like that, but at least, though, to set new records for my own self, for my own personal records, it's really, really fun to do. So that's why I kind of like doing these. So I do want to showcase my records. Like I said, I do have pictures that I took of each. So without further ado, my high score. And this, of course, the picture that I took once I beat, Robotnik in that Mecha Robo chase scene at the in these Doomsday Zone, which obviously for Sonic is the final zone of the game. And most of the time I will play it as Tails and Knuckles. I do enjoy that as well, and obviously I do have all 4 modes completed and saved, of course. But my favorite playthrough is with Sonic, usually with Sonic and Tails, but I will play with Sonic alone as well. But anyways, though, so upon completing it here, I achieved a score, as you can see here, of 3,306,610, which I did actually earlier this week. I was really, really excited about it. My big goal for myself was to try and break 3 million, and I was able to do that, and I was really, really proud of myself for being able to do that. The big keys for achieving a high score in the game, which obviously one I will get to on the next, on this next slide, but your ring count, for each time you go through an act, and your ring count gets saved at the end of the act, because not all acts do. Not all zones do, I should even say. But the ones that do, you really want to try to achieve as high of a ring count as possible. And with that, you can max out on rings in a given act, which 999 is the max. And to achieve that, what you've got to do is you've got to try to look for these bonus stages to try to boost up your ring count while playing through an act. There are 3 different bonus stages when playing through the complete Sonic 3 and Knuckles. You've got the slot machine bonus stage, which is probably my least favorite of them, and especially because you can play through it, and if you get, if you remember the slot machine portion from the casino zone in Sonic 2, you can end up losing rings if you get, for instance, 3 Robotniks in a row. It takes away, I believe, 100 rings. So it's one you've got to be careful with, and it's basically luck of the draw when you hit the slot machine. What you're gonna get is the 3 icons that show up there. It looks like the stars that appear, because you got to hit those checkpoint posts in order to unlock the bonus stages, and the minimum rings needed is 20 to unlock, and that 20 to 34 state. Because you've got essentially 15, that gap of 15 rings that you can get to for a certain bonus stage to appear. So the first one appears at 20 rings up to 34, and that's that slot machine one. And the stars that appear above the checkpoint, they'll look like sort of like this yellowish, orangish color to them. So that obviously is the illustration that's for the slot machine bonus stage. The next bonus stage is the magnetic orb bonus stage, which I usually refer to as the red star bonus stage, because those are the color stars that appear above the checkpoint, and that's the first access point for that is from 35 to 49 rings. And that one, to me, that's the one that I usually try to get to, and I'll usually, whichever way possible, when I know I'm nearing, because you got to kind of know where the checkpoints are, and, know where the rings are located in the stage as well, to try to reach, if you want to try to unlock a certain bonus stage at a certain checkpoint, which again I usually want to do that magnetic orb one, the red star bonus stage, because this is really where you can excel, because you've got these special ring capsules. You've got the standard rings in the bonus stage itself, but then you've got these special ring capsules, and depending upon where you are in the bonus stage, because you're starting out from the bottom, and you've got to watch this sort of magnetic field at the bottom that if you fall into it, that's the end basically, and you're taken out of the bonus stage. So you want to try to make your way up through the going from magnetic orb to magnetic orb, and you can use these trigger points as well to knock you up like you're in a pinball machine almost. But anyways, so when you go up though, you'll see these small orbs, that you can touch, that are near the larger orbs. And they'll unlock items, they'll unlock shields, 1-ups. Sometimes they can be clear bubbles, which are obviously nothing. And then, of course, you've got those ring containers that you can get, and they're like, you'll see like the ring, and then you'll see like this gray or silver circle surrounding it, in a larger circle. And those, like I said, depending upon where you are in the magnetic orb stage, they're worth different amounts. The ones towards the bottom are worth 10 rings, but then as you get further up, they get up to 20, and then 30, and then 40, and then the ones at the very top, and this is where you can really, these are your real money makers, the ones at the very top before you can just exit the stage on your own. You'll see the orbs that you can hit, and the rings there are worth 80 rings each. So, and there's 2 at the top, so you can get a total of 160 just from those 2. If it does unlock the ring containers. The other thing is you got to be mindful, because the ones at the top, they can either be the ring containers or they can be 1-ups. So, so you kind of have to be mindful of that. You can avoid touching whatever item is released from the small orbs, and then kind of go off screen and back up to that area, because you can kind of move around like that as long as you don't touch that magnetic goal thing that's heading up the bonus stage, which slowly progresses up while you're in the stage. So, but as long as you can maintain yourself in there, like I said, you can kind of go away from a certain area and come back if you don't get whatever item came out of the small orbs when you touch them. So you can try to wait and get what you want, you know what I mean, as long as you've got the ability to. So the ones at the top, obviously, with those ring containers that are worth 80 rings each, that's, like I said, that's going to be your real money maker, and that's why the magnetic orb stage, to me, is the real money maker as far as collecting rings go. So that's the big thing. So you want to try to collect as many rings as you can in a given act, which will obviously in turn bulk up your score. 1 ring is worth 100 points, so then you just kind of do the math from there. But then basically the max rings you can get in a zone, or in an act, I should say, 999, will then earn you a score bonus. If you complete the stage with that, you'll get 99,900 points added to your overall score. So that's one way that's the big key to bulk, or one of the big keys to bulking it up. The other key is, as I mentioned before, getting the perfects in the special stages when you're collecting the emeralds. So if you really can, try to work on that and try to see if you can master getting the perfects in the special stages, because like I said, that'll add, each of those adds 50,000 points to your score. And you can, like I was alluding to with that guy who I kind of felt was inflating his score a bit, you can get a perfect more than once in a special stage. Each time you do, you'll get the 50,000 points, and obviously the extra life along with it. But usually, and I understand where he was coming from with that, but I usually like to try to play for keeps when I play the special stages. So that's, so like I said, it's not wrong. It's just, that's what he wanted to do to bulk up his score. But for me, I'd rather just get the perfect, get the emerald, and move on. You know what I mean? That's just me. You know what I mean? So probably why I'll never get a world's high score. But that's just the way I am. So and I'm not criticizing or anything like that. You know what I mean? Because the guy had to continuously get the perfect in the special stages, and he did it just about every time. So that's pretty darn that's pretty damn impressive. So so I definitely give him some kudos for that. So it's just for me personally, like I said, I like to get the perfect and get the emerald, complete it, and move on. But then other than the rings and the perfects and the special stages, the other another big key factor is with your time. Usually with less than 3.5 minutes, you can get more than, if you finish an act in less than 3.5 minutes, you'll get more than 100 points, where 3.5 minutes and above only merits you 100 points added to your score for time. I believe it's like 3 to 3.5. If you get 3 but under 3.5 time completion, you'll get 1,000 points. I believe 2 or 2.5 to just under 3 is 2,000 points, and I think if you complete it under a minute, you get like 10,000 points or something. I usually can't complete zones or acts of zones in under a minute anyway, so not really looking at that. But more so than that, though, honestly, if you really want a big time bonus, the little trick here is actually trying to complete an act. You got to be really, really cautious about this, really careful, and you got to be on the spot here. You got to be really Johnny on the spot. You got to complete an act exactly at 9 minutes and 59 seconds. So right before you'd get that time over. Loss of life event happening to you, because that's what happens. You lose a life if you get a time over, if you go more than, if you do hit that 10-minute mark fully. So you can't go any more than 9 minutes and 59 seconds in. But if you do complete an act right at 9 minutes and 59 seconds, that merits you 100,000 points. So any of those other time bonuses are meh to me, because I want that 100,000 point bonus. Some acts are easier to achieve it than others, especially if, depending on how much control you personally have on when exactly you finish an act. So you just kind of got to get a feel for it. But all the ones that I feel that I'm able to take advantage of getting that 9 minutes 59 second 100,000 point time bonus, I will do, and that helped build up my score as well. So the 100,000 point time bonus at 9:59, building up as many rings as you can in each act, and of course getting the perfects and the special stages. Those are for the most part going to help bulk up your score. Defeating enemies helps a little bit too. Usually if it's just a standard hit to defeat an enemy, you just get 100 points. But if you get consecutive hits in a row, you can build it up from there all the way up to 10,000. But, it takes quite a bit to get to that, because it goes 100, 200, 500, 1,000. And then I forgot how many, I don't know, it's like 5 or 7 times on 1,000. And then you'll start hitting 10,000, for each time that you're hitting an enemy, but it's got to be consecutive. So if you reach a stopping point and then try to hit an enemy again, it's just going to be 100. So but to me, that's not really what I focus on. Like I said, I focus on the rings count in each act, the perfects and the special stages, and then that 100,000 point time bonus when possible. So like I said, that will really help bulk up your score. So anyway, though, to continue on, because that's really far as the side goals that I try to achieve, that's the main one that I look at. So that's kind of why I spent so much time talking about this right now. I apologize for rambling on and on here, but I get really excited about this game. So anyway, though, my another one of my goals is this is my maximum ring count, obviously in a given act. And yes, I did want to make note of this because I did manage to get the maximum rings that you can get on 999. And I have not been able to do this consecutively, to be honest with you. I'm not, and I haven't been consistent with this. So, because it's not hard, it's not easy to do, I should say, to try and attain that maximum ring count and finish an act with it. Because especially if you've got all the emeralds, and the ability to transform into your, super/hyper forms, those drain your rings. Generally 1 per second gets drained off of your count when you transform. But if you can avoid transforming and you can actually finish an act with the maximum amount of rings, it is a nice goal to be able to achieve. And it wasn't until, like I said, it wasn't until recently that I was able to actually finish an act with the maximum amount of rings. So I was really, I was proud of myself for it, and I've been able to do it multiple times since then. But like I said, it's not something that I can really do on a consistent basis. You know what I mean? Because especially with boss fights too, you got to be careful. It's easy to get hit, and then, like I said, if I get hit, and at least if I have the emeralds and the ability to transform, at least I can do that and hold on to as many rings as I can. But with doing that kind of process, though, it was I would end up finishing with whatever it was, like 990 rings, so I'd be off of that maximum amount, allowable. So so that's definitely a side goal that you can try to achieve, is, like I said, finishing an act with the maximum ring count of 999. And then another side goal, or at least one that I always look at as well, and like I said, this you can mainly see vis-a-vis playing a no save mode of the game. And that is the maximum lives count. And my maximum lives count, which you don't count until it's the end of the game, just like with the high score that you achieve. And that is here, and it's actually 188. I know it looks like 88, but as you can see, the 8 in front looks larger than the that first 8 looks larger than the second one. And I know it's not complete, I know it's a little bit blurry. I did the best I could with taking the picture. But when you reach 100, you'll see the number that's in front looks larger than the secondary number. And that's to illustrate the fact that you have surpassed 100 rings. So that's why that's what it looks like here. But that is 188 rings. I would have really liked to see if I could have gotten 200 and see what it would have looked like at that point, because I've never achieved even 200 lives, even within the game, obviously, not just finishing the game with this amount, but I've never actually gotten that far, in the game. So this was definitely a nice goal that I was able to achieve. This beat my previous lives total by a nice little amount. My previous one was 171. So, so like I said, I did beat it by a nice little amount. And just like with my high score, my previous total on that was around 2,946,000. So getting that 3,306,000 was a nice little increase there as well. Where I got at with all this stuff, well, obviously the rings total is what it is, so that's going to be pat, for forever basically. But lives total and high score, I would like to see if maybe I could try to beat those, those counts that I got, the lives count and the high score. But I'll be honest with you, I had a really hard time getting to what I got, and it's hard to really be perfect throughout the game, even if you're a seasoned veteran at it, because I mess up, my share of times, lose lives, even if I finish an act, but I've had times where I'll lose my rings for, this and that reason. So it's not the easiest thing to try to do to accomplish these goals. So that's why they're kind of goals that I do strive for, and I'm very content with what I've achieved so far. Like I said, the rings count is what it is, but as far as my high score and my lives count, I'm definitely very, to be honest, I'm very proud of myself for what I was able to accomplish here, in attaining and attaining the score and amount of lives that I did manage to finish the game with. So even if, whether it takes me a very long time to break my own personal records, as I've illustrated here, or if I just never break those records, at least, I feel confident with the records that I have set for myself. So, and especially so with the high score, that's the one that I look at the most. You know, and I kind of equate that to building up your power level for Dragon Ball Z. So, but it was really nice. It was my ultimate goal was to break 3 million, and I broke it. So, I can die happy now. So, anyways, though, so those are just some side goals which I kind of wanted to discuss in the game, and really, really kind of run through things in this game, and and obviously, I really, really love the game very, very much. So, but other than that, though, this basically does bring us to the end of the video here, and I know it was a long one, but I kind of figured it would be. Like I said, I really wanted to kind of go into detail about all this stuff, with discussing the game and the story mode and how to complete it, and obviously with some of these side goals and side missions that you can do as well. Because like I said, there's a lot to do in the game. It's obviously by far my favorite Sonic game, and again, my one of my favorite video games overall. Second, like I said, my second favorite game overall. And obviously, I really, really love it, and we'll play it forever and ever. And will always be one of the games that I do play the most of. So, I was really, really excited to get to do this video today. But other than that, folks, I do really think that this does bring us to the end of the video. As always, though, I do thank you so very much for watching. If you would like to subscribe to me, please feel free to do so. Also, feel free to like, and or comment. Share your thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, as well as on Sonic in general. I'd love to hear from any of you. And other than that, though, ladies and gentlemen, though, as always, remember, you be good to yourselves, and sayonara.